Welcome to the Not Badger for the week ending September 10th, 2016. Here, thanks to our indentured Ronin, who are indebted to us thanks to a loophole in the Code of Bushido, we have compiled a collection of funny, interesting, and hopefully useful clips from our most watched shows. Enjoy the spoils of their hard work. In Cherry Stem number 11, we look at various tech advancements made for the benefit of men by men.
I guess the first experiment looking into the possibility of trying to find artificial ways to record and present reality itself would be something that was invented in 1938. There's a man by the name of Charles Wheatstone, and he did an experiment where he showed that the brain can construct a 3D image from two 2D images. So it was the stereoscope viewer, and it was invented in 1838. Which leads you to what we know now as the Viewmaster. But it's those two images that is what's in our virtual reality glasses. It's just that we have video and all this new technology has been applied to this. We're still using old concepts because they work, but we're applying new technology to the problem.
I believe his name is, let me just get it exactly. Oh, Skip Rizzo. He is a creator of Virtual Iraq as well as Virtual Afghanistan, where it's an experience that allows soldiers to go through the explosions and the sights and the smells that actually, and the kinetic associations that they had with that place, so that they can engage emotionally with their memory and thereby reduce the fear and reduce the PTSD response. It's a healing process to deal with PTSD and other trauma. And some of these machines, they actually are attached to sets and things like that. So yeah, there's the machine that is involved in Virtual Iraq. It actually is connected to scent and little jars that have like various scents in them and a variety of things like that to provide all five senses with an experience, not just the visual. So I really see how something like that could be tied in for a more educational or a recreational use with VR for a project like Jonathan's, where you have a virtual tour of a place, a historical place, a historical time, and you can have all the sights and smells, and that would be and of course that would be the future of television, obviously. And to be able to visualize that and to actually kind of get inside a molecule and get inside a protein or whatever can do massive things for cancer, AIDS, I mean, you name it. I feel like it can provide to the right, people, to the right physicians, to those who can understand these things. They can see perhaps issues that have to do with an understanding, or rather that are helped by their understanding of the 3D nature of this molecule, because that's
not just molecules, but like they could do 3D scans of a body or whatever, and then but instead of doing exploratory surgery, they could then just slough off different layers and look at things in a three-dimensional perspective that you just can't make out things in 2D that you can in 3D. There's something additional that you get through a 3D interface that they would be able to do better diagnostics and things like that. And so I mean the technology is already kind of there to do that sort of thing, and there's just a variety of ways in which it can be helpful. The funny thing is the Deus Ex Facebook page, for a long time when they hadn't just came out, one of the things that they kind of kept up with was a lot of the technology that has been developed. And so they go to conferences, and they've been doing a good job of actually kind of being part of an awareness campaign for prosthetics, because here's the thing, they are developing a variety of prosthetics to not just help those who have lost limbs, but also people who've lost the use of limbs. That happens frequently. And then there's also, of course, creating things like powered suits to help people whose bodies no longer work very well, or for people who you need to be able to carry out extremely strenuous things, such as carrying equipment, long miles, or loading boxes, or a variety of things. And so all of these things have gotten where brain interface and usage has advanced significantly, where there's a variety of ways in which one of the ways in which they make prosthetics work is through hooking to nerves in the stump, for instance, of someone who's lost a limb, and they read the signals from there. A lot of times they'll customize it to that person's, what they feel like is where their phantom limb. It's like, okay, where do you feel like this is in your phantom limb? Because the nerves are still there, but they're kind of on the surface of the skin, and so they end up hooking things up so that the person can just using thought can use these prosthetic limbs. Well, see, the thing is that it also goes in the other direction now, where they've been able to make types of material that can sense pressure and a variety of other types of stimulation, and then send that directly to the brain. The way that they're doing that, they've got a variety of ways in which they're doing that, but one of them is they have implants in the brain, and sometimes that requires invasive surgery. But that's why we have a link here. The one link that I really recommend, the Do6 Facebook page has got lots of great stuff on prosthetics, but if you want one central point to kind of jump off from to a lot of different links, is this Wired article on the DARPA-funded implant that travels to the brain via blood vessels. So this implant, they apparently you can inject it into a vein, kind of, and put it all the way into the brain through that vein. The technology is going to a point where we will have brain interface with computers, and it'll be very direct. And a lot of people don't. We've got this superstitious desire to make the human brain be something magical. However, it is a system. And so the point here is that cyberization is something that we're going to have to deal with. And what's unfortunate is I've already begun to recognize that there is a growing group of people who are kind of against it very viscerally. For instance, at one of the conferences that we went to, people were against transhumanism. Now, the transhumanism movement is basically they're kind of embracing cyberization. They're expanding their lives through the use of different types of technology. And the people who are in the spiritual community are actually extremely against it. And I find it strange because here you have a group of people who believe that the spirit can reside everywhere and anywhere, and yet then when you talk about the spirit residing in a machine, suddenly they don't like it. So it's like, okay, so the spirit can reside in the rocks and in the trees, but if you put it in a machine that we make, then suddenly it's not okay. I don't understand that, but they have this. There's like this growing thing where they all agree. They're all like, oh yeah, transhumanism is the worst thing ever. And so it's so you've already got the roots of this kind of conflict that we will be facing. And unfortunately, when it comes down to it, it's going to be some of the most vulnerable and some of the people who we were trying to help. Here we have got, we've been developing these technologies for people who've lost limbs, people who've served their country and have lost a tremendous amount. We're trying to bring that back to them, and then you're going to have these people who are against them. We're not quite there, but we are very, very close between the neural networks and how well those are progressing towards creating AI. So you'll actually have people who have these neural implants, and so then the thing is, you've got these people who have that Luddite feel about them, and they have that prejudice, and they have, what are we going to do when we have these people that we've helped? And then you have these people who look at them in some way as they have an unfair advantage, because that's already starting to happen, by the way. People are actually using prosthetics. They can sometimes outperform people with regular legs when they have certain types of prosthetic legs. And so, there's going to be this kind of an envy, but then at the same time, a lot of times these are people who've lost something, and we're just making up the difference. So at the same time, you're also going to have people who want to augment themselves, and they're going to augment themselves, and that is going to happen, but that is going to, of course, be something that is for the very wealthy alone, and those people who don't have the resources to do so are not going to have the same advantages. And so there is a kind of interesting social unrest that a lot of people, we tend to just kind of focus on what's going on right now, but that is something that is going to be kind of on the horizon here the next 20 to 50 years. When you're the programmer type of person and things like that, you tend to have this view of things that is, you try to look at the ways that things could go wrong, and so you end up kind of, it's a mindset that can go terribly wrong, because you start thinking, oh, it could go wrong this way, it could go wrong that way, it's never going to work, because you start seeing all the ways that things could go wrong, and it's a valuable resource to have people who are troubleshooters, who are thinking all the ways that things are going wrong, because we have to have that. But at the same time, you really need people who are dreaming of of everything that could go right. We have to have something to look forward to. We have to be able to. The future is coming. There's something going to happen, and if we can see as many different ways that things could go right as possible, then we can have something to shoot for, something to aim for, a direction to move towards, and not just trying to hold back everything in the belief that everything's going to go wrong. And so it's funny how you've got these two different kinds of engineer versus artist mindsets, and how it's important that they work together.
We're already there. You can buy a $99 Gear VR and stick your Samsung phone in it, and they've also got alt space and all that stuff to go in and you can socialize with people around the world. You could even get phone calls while you're socializing and share the phone call with everyone you're socializing with. You can transport yourself to any environment you want, and you could do that. You could share video, watch a movie together. You could do all kinds of stuff. That's on the low end. Actually, you go even lower. You could use Google Cardboard type stuff, which still uses cell phones, which people already have. On the upper end, you could get an Oculus or a Vive. And there's like 20 or 30 other headsets that are coming down the line. So, I mean, we're already there, and they're using technology that everybody already has. They're starting off with having the high end for early adopters that you're talking about. They can afford it to help, because that's what's going to like help pay for it and push the technology. But they're also going to the people that have cell phones, and I guess I could throw in $99 or $30 to buy like a housing to stick it in with the proper optics and that in. Or Google Cardboard for people even cheaper, and they can get it for like $5 or $10. I remember back in the 80s when Apple and all the companies were fighting over like schools and trying to have their computer to be what schools use to get kids into this new technology that they've been building up, this new marketplace. And Apple was huge in that sort of thing. And I've been seeing them doing that with VR. Kids are going to be going to school, and they're going to be introduced and using these devices. So they're already being introduced, and they're going to be expecting it, and they're going to be very adept, and they're going to be excited about it, and they're going to be developing this stuff. So I guess we all have to start kind of catching up, because they're already being introduced to it. This is going to be their future, their world. So we have to shape it, though. Yeah, I can see a day where like platforms like, say, Skype will be using things like AR. I know a lot of people, like we use Skype a lot for doing meetings and things like that. Imagining having a meeting, but you can use AR, and you can actually project the people that are not actually present in your room, but you can actually put them there as if they're sitting at the board table or the living room or whatever space you want to conduct the meeting in. I'm going to see this stuff embedded in all kinds of things everybody takes for granted every day. So, I mean, one thing I've been working on is trying to find some way to create a virtual badger cave that people can explore in there, and you can actually do radio shows through it, and the audience is actually present in the space, just like a real kind of a talk show type thing.
Yeah, that's cool as shit. Yeah, just do the entire thing VR. That would be so neat, because then you kind of could have like an audience there. It's almost like you have some people up on stage, almost like a panel, and basically create kind of where every time it's like a virtual conference.
Now on to Rant Circuit number 67, where we look at the science of trolling and androphobia with Milo Yiannopoulos.
Hello, guys. Ready?
I swear it started off as zombie hordes and then became zombie herds. Do hordes naturally evolve into herds, or is it the other way around?
Do hordes have more organization than herds is really my question.
I just feel like they're appropriating my culture.
Yeah,
Zombies
the herd culture?
Yeah, zombies have appropriated deer culture.
And I'm a hoarder, so I feel like they're appropriating my condition.
Okay, but
I'm not a hardcore hoarder, but there's lots of shit I should throw out.
I thought deers were solitary animals, though.
Some of them herd, some of them don't. It depends.
Oh,
on
yeah,
the
that's right.
species.
Reindeer herd.
Yes, like the 300 that were brutally struck down by Zeus in Norway, because Zeus is a dick.
Okay.
Or I suppose it should be Thor in Norway, because Thor is also a dick, apparently, to deer.
Hashtag dicks out for deers.
Known as trolling came from anonymous users, but not all of them.
Oh my God,
This
she
is not
was called
trolling.
transgender?
Why don't they understand the difference?
It's just insults, right?
Yeah,
I mean, trolling.
abusing someone and insulting them is not the same as trolling. Trolling is when you do something that's kind of intentionally stupid, but to the point where it's believable. Like having a really intense conversation with someone about how the Earth is totally obviously flat, and citing like loads of stuff that superficially looks like it could be actual evidence, even though it's complete bullshit, and just sort of engaging with that. That would be a troll, because you know you're pissing someone off. That would be a trolling thing. Or like
there is something of a spectrum. There is, sometimes people are, trying to make an argument, and sometimes people are just making an argument they don't believe in to get a rise out of you. And sometimes it's kind of half and half. Sometimes they're saying something they half believe in, and partially to get a reaction out of you. It's not entirely troll or not. Yeah, so
Okay,
A
so it's
spectrum of trolling.
okay. So trolling is essentially trying to get a rise out of someone else by presenting a non-actually genuinely held belief. Yeah. So you try
That's
to
one form of it, yeah.
you try to get someone, you try to troll someone into an argument by not really presenting a belief that you don't actually have. What was, I think these people actually do believe that this woman looks like an ape. It may have nothing to do with her race. It may
Well,
just,
loads of people made that comparison with George Bush. I didn't see an ABC slot saying, all of these horrible, evil people.
yeah, racist
I
because
don't
they think
remember
white
that
people look like
happening.
chimps. All right, yeah, okay. Let's hear the words of the most dangerous faggot.
Of course.
What is trolling? How do you look at it?
I like to think of myself as a virtuous troll. You know, I'm doing God's work.
Milo Yiannopoulos, also known as Nero online, joined in the tormenting of Jones, calling her a man on Twitter to his 350...
Okay, wait a second.
you wouldn't consider that an insult, surely.
Well, but they say that when you call a boy, like you throw like a girl, don't be a girl. Okay, that's an insult to boys, but that's femophobia. Is this homophobia? No, that wouldn't be right. I guess it could be homophobia. No. Androphobia. Is this androphobia? When they're saying comparing her being insulted by being compared to a man, it is an insult. I mean,
I don't recall anyone getting banned from Twitter for saying you throw like a girl.
But also, like, if they're gonna say that that's femophobia and it's actually latent hatred of women to say that, you know, to insult someone by saying you're like a girl, then is it latent hatred of men to say that this woman looks like a man? How can they have it both ways?
Well, surely it should be the highest compliment because we live in a patriarchy that hates women.
Yeah.
And, you know, everything is designed to service men and please men, and men are awesome. So saying a woman is like a man should be like highest praise, right?
Believe, but of course I do say things in a way that is going to elicit a response from people.
Jones detailed the abusive words and images she was receiving and the racist and misogynistic slurs against her that even compared her to an ape.
Yeah, we gathered.
Yeah, we knew this because you've shown us the same 3 tweets like 3 or 4 times by now. Almost like you couldn't find anything more than like these 3.
It's not trolling. It's just insulting.
Yeah.
It's like, are we supposed to be shocked by this, by being told it is compared to an ape? Are we expected to have like an attention span that fucking short? Or are we children who just saw a picture of an ape and now need to be reminded of the word that picture is? Is this fucking Sesame Street?
Yes, it probably is. Okay, zucchini.
Oh my God! This idea,
you or me as a human being with feelings,
of course she is. But this idea that celebrities are these fragile wallflowers, give me a break. You and I both know people in Hollywood.
Because she acted in a
Stars of
movie,
Hollywood
you rallied
blockbusters
people.
are sitting at home crying into their iPhones.
Why didn't you?
Yes, he's got a point. Like, if you're gonna put yourself out there, oh, look at him. He looks like a howler monkey, the guy from ABC. Oh shit! No, I'm in for it.
Racist, you hate white men. Why?
No, but seriously, look at those lips. It looks like he's calling to the, doing some sort of mating call.
Well, I mean, Milo is there, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I guess. Well,
He's only human. I mean, come on now.
yeah, that's true. That's true. This is some serious. I don't know what is it, like a love hate sex afterwards sort of thing going on potentially. Shall I shut up? Shall we move on? Shall we zucchini?
I just found it very interesting that they're saying like that Milo. They actually said like he was encouraging or inciting. No, he wasn't. This thing was already in full swing. He just kind of jumped on the bandwagon, and he then just sort of got a shitload of flack for it because he's like or was very prominent on the twatters. He didn't initiate this.
It's like he turned up at a riot that had been happening for hours, and he like said one thing and then left. But because he was the most famous person to turn up at that riot, he was made an example of.
I think we got a winner. But let's see what this. Let's see if this howler monkey's courtship bears fruit. Oh shit! Sorry, sir. I didn't mean. Oh wait. You're a white man. I get to do that. Okay. I get it. I get a free pass.
A good way to get your point across is to say the most sort of intellectually airtight thing you can think of, but say it at the one point in the discussion where you raise your voice, because then that's the one bit they'll use. Because you know how they edit these things. They take the stupidest thing you've said and the loudest, angriest thing you've said. If you only say one loud, angry thing, then they're going to have to use that. But if you like really loudly, angrily say something like not at all emotional, just really angrily, loudly shout some important statistics, and they'll have to air that.
Okay.
But
do you guys agree that the next 10 to 20 seconds is really cringy? What happens next?
I haven't seen this far into it. I've only watched the first minute or so.
Okay, all right.
The part where she tells everyone to dogpile people she doesn't like.
No. Let's go ahead.
I find it kind of cringeworthy that she's being defined as a relationship expert. I mean, what? How? Where? When? Why did this happen? What is Leslie Jones' knowledge when it comes to the marital strife?
Probably I would. Well, maybe the next few seconds will inform us of where she stands with relationships.
Maybe she's an expert in relationships because she was very good at defending that child that fell into that pit one time.
Oh, I see that. They're relationship expert. What? Are they just okay? Zucchini.
She's it's as though she's some kind of magical Negro.
Yeah, it's just okay. Zucchini.
It's a trope, folks. It's a trope. I'm not being entirely racist. The trope is.
Saturday Night Live.
Nobody writes love letters anymore.
They don't write love letters?
Well, maybe you do, you sexy creamsicle. Just want to chop all the orange off and get to the crib.
We like to talk about the Middle East as being a hotbed of misogyny, but if you actually break down the statistics, the more control a violent aggressor has over the target of his or her violence, the more likely in the Middle East that they choose a man to be the subject of violence. So with bombing, it's equally men and women because usually the bomber doesn't have any control over the gender. With a sniper, it's like 95% a man. When you're talking about kidnapping, it's goes up to 98% male targets because they have absolute control over who they typically kidnap. And when you talk about torture to death, so you kidnap and then you torture your kidnap victim to death, that is 99.99999% male. So even in the Middle East, the hotbed of misogyny, the most violent criminals and terrorists and aggressors prefer to target men with their violence overwhelmingly, which is why in those areas, if a woman woke up a man, she would be 3 times more likely to die violently. Just saying. Okay.
Yeah, we're not saying the human race is like the praying mantis, where the female bites the head off the male, and they've just gotten used to this over years. Nor are we saying that humans are like hornbills, where they do the rape dungeon thing that Tilda talked about. In reality, we're a primate species with nuanced things like hypergamy and monogamy and what have you. But, folks, if we're playing the extremes game and we look at the numbers, we're closer to praying mantises than hornbills. Chew on that for a while.
Were enough to drive her to shut down her Twitter account. I've been racially cyberbullied with tweets and pictures so horrific and racially charged that I can't subject myself any longer to the hate. That's what actress Leslie Jones...
Wait, hang on. So she did the sensible thing and she closed her laptop? Well done. That's the appropriate reaction.
And then opened it up again and emailed her agent saying, I'm being harassed on the internet. Make me famous. Can do.
It doesn't seem to work for me.
Yeah.
Zucchini?
Zucchini.
Temporarily abandoning her Twitter account after the vicious online attacks in July. It's just too much. It shouldn't be like this. So hurt right now.
Seriously? Like, seriously?
If you could hear the people in the crowd, like if you know in the cinema perhaps, or in the audience of your show, young lady in girl group, you'd hear them saying some pretty fucking sick things, but you can't hear them because they're surrounded by a crowd of other people and they're in the dark. Well, Twitter is a format where you can hear the fucking warblings of some very sick people, but it's the same process. Don't go right up to them and listen. Go the other way. Just don't go to Twitter. It's
I just don't
cancer.
understand,
Why do you
like,
not know this?
The insults that they got were so fucking trivial. Like, the complaints that these... Okay, incidentally, this graphic is reported, so one assumes that they mean reported to a agency of some kind.
This is from the Pew Research thing. But it's weird because I can't help but think that this is a horrible misrepresentation of that, because I think this is going to be the Pew Research one, which found out that 60% of people have never experienced any sort of online anything, and that this might then just be a breakdown of it. I've pulled the study up right now. I'm just going to like word search through it and see if I can find the 45%.
We're getting information from the chat, which is, you know, the source of all logic and sanity. Those stats are wrong.
Probably.
60% male, 40% female experienced harassment. Yeah, I thought that, but they might be talking about reporting to an actual authority, which will reduce the rate that men say that they were harassed. If you ask them on an anonymous survey, they report more. But if you ask them to actually report it to an authority, they don't report it to an authority because they don't feel like they're served by authorities, for the obvious reason that men aren't generally served by authorities who are supposed to deal with abuse and harassment and sexual assault and domestic violence.
The trolling against Stein was relatively minor.
I think as a white dude, I'm in a different situation
Oh, drink.
than
Oh,
a woman or person of color or who felt bodily threatened in my life.
This is not a consequence-free hobby.
Lindy West, a performer and author, has...
Oh, that's Lindy West. I've heard people talk about her in terms of she's famous for being trolled. But I didn't know. I've never actually. Okay, this is the Lindy West. Okay.
we're bringing the strings together, as it were.
Feminist views.
Thanks to a glut of cultural messaging, I knew very clearly what I was not. Small, thin, pretty, girlish, but there was precious little media telling me what I was.
You're girlish, by the way. I don't know why people told you you're not girlish. You don't have to be skinny to be girlish. A lot of children are fat.
Yeah, she is pretty girlish. I don't even know what, like, if you're gonna promote this belief that half the human race is a bunch of evil savages, you can probably expect a little pushback from that because it's offensive. I mean, and it's not offensive in, like, you know, you're just joking, but that's actually demonizing your group of people. By saying that they would do such a thing, that's demonizing. Saying they look like monkeys is not really demonizing. But you know what? Saying they look like howler monkeys, like I did with that white guy who is obviously making some sort of mating call with Milo. That's not demonizing. You know what? Les Zucchini.
What I could be.
Please welcome Jezebel staff writer Lindy West, everybody. Lindy West.
In 2013,
She writes for Jezebel. Okay, the plot thickens.
Okay, but she was also significantly smaller, I think.
Then what?
Than the previous clip. She writes for Jezebel, which is just about the most hateful magazine on the planet, and she says, "Oh my God, people give me the hate that I put out back, and that's a problem." Okay.
Yeah, I portray half the human race as demons, and then look, some of them act in a way that might not be called angelic.
Oh yeah, what's interesting, I portray men as demons because they are demons, and then they act like demons, and I'm surprised and shocked, and I appeal to other men to save me from those men acting like demons. Continue.
politics. If you're a conservative and you're too funny or too effective and too much of a threat, which is what I am, then sooner or later you're going to lose your account.
Twitter denies such censorship, but the wave Milo Yiannopoulos is riding to fame is having a real impact, turning life online into a living hell for some and ruining much of the fun for...
A living hell, huh? You know, in every category of victimhood, I have these idiots beat. And yet, not only do they mock me, but I refuse to turn around and say that, oh yeah, these mean tweets or these mean, like this trivial shit, it's only making me live in hell if I allow it to. That's my choice. And it's just galling. Because the funny thing is if a woman steps one step outside of her prescribed role, the kind of shit that these individuals who say that they advocate for women will do to her eclipses anything that these crybabies talk about. I'd
like to take this article back in time, like 100 years, and show it to the people, for whom a telephone was emergent technology. And I'd like to show them, to get one of these people to talk to them and say, oh yeah, in the future, we all have that device where we can get all the world's information at our fingertips whenever we feel like it. We can turn everything on, we can turn everything off. Oh really? That sounds amazing. What's that like? It's a living hell.
It's a living hell because of my intolerance isn't tolerated. People push back against the bullshit I spew. Feminists need to have a scapegoat just to get through the day. And then they complain about other people insulting them. You need to hate someone just to get through the day. You need to hate an entire group of people just to get yourself out of the bed. Out of bed in the morning. You need that to just you just line up, you're looking at your ceiling, you're like, I have no more, oh, I hate men! That got me up. That got me out of the bed. This is that you have an entire ideology that's all about giving you a scapegoat to hate in order to get yourself through a day. And then you turn around and blame everybody else or other people for being so-called hateful. Well, what is it about fish? They don't know water because they live in it. You can't even see your own hatred because you're saturated in it and you justify it. And if you think it's not true, then you tell me as a feminist whether or not you think men oppress women. Because the language of oppression is the language of hatred. Every group of people that has ever justified killing, raping, ostracizing another group of people has started with, they oppress us. Every single one. And any group of people who was legitimately oppressed had to fight against the narrative that they were the oppressors. Just putting out there. If you need hatred to just get through a day, maybe you shouldn't be talking about other people's hatred, pointing fingers. So-called hatred. Which I don't think Milo is hateful at all.
On Polecat Cast number 78, we talk about the news of the week, including implanted uteruses from the Keck School, white knighting, and mob justice against Brock Turner.
Actually, I actually tend to agree with him that manliness can be actually harming the planet because, prior to this show, I was actually out on a run and I took a leak in the forest, so that might be hurting the environment a little bit, but...
Well, that depends on what's in your diet, Max.
That's just you putting the minerals back into the land after you horrible man, you took them out by eating. See, you're returning that to whence it came.
What Max didn't tell you though is he peed on a baby chipmunk and blinded it.
It's true.
Now, see, if you're blinding it, then your diet has something in there that you should be eating.
You need more asparagus.
No, it's too much, I think, at that point.
Yeah.
Oh well, now that would nose blind it, not
Yeah. That's actual toxic masculinity.
Yeah, it might freak him out if I actually happen to eat some asparagus and then some red beets, and then a deer just walks by in the forest. She's like, "What the hell?"
My first thought when I heard this was, is this feminist way of saying we're gonna, have the technology for uteruses so men would know what it's like to give birth to children, so that they can finally understand the pain and suffering that every woman goes through everywhere on Earth for all time. But then I backed off and I thought about it and I said, okay, where I think this would, and I didn't even read the article yet. This was just going off of the name, and then I read the article afterwards. Where I think this would benefit is if it was trans people, men transitioning to women that want to have children. So I think, yeah, for them in those cases, sure, I would say that is the way to go. If that's going to work out better for them, then yeah, I'm all for that. As far as like births go, another place my brain went was, we're already having too many kids as it is. Do we really want like the rest of the population having kids? So, but I mean, that was obviously an exaggeration in my mind. But it's funny how we're at the point where we're 5 years away from putting uteruses in men, according to this woman from the Keck school. So take that for what it's worth. But we don't have a male birth control pill yet. It's like, where's the pill? Can we have a pill now? Like, we can fucking transplant uteruses. Can we have a pill?
This kind of seems like a misplaced thing. It's like I was joking earlier about Max asking the wrong question. It's like, I don't know if this is like, I don't have an opinion whether it's good or bad, but I feel like this is kind of, I don't want to say it's a waste of time, but it seems like you're saying, like, where's the pill for men, or where are all these other things that kind of could be better served with the money you put into researching this? But again, though, this is just me kind of thinking, why this? Why not something else? It's just maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm not. Whatever. It's just like I just feel like these are resources that can be put into other places. It's like, do we really need for men to have babies? I mean, why don't you make sure that you get the uterus transplants solid? You get all that technology. You put all the money into funding that technology and that research, and make sure that works and it's safe, and that it's not going to present a problem to the babies being born, and all these other kind of things. Because I'm sure there's still a lot of questions about these sorts of things before they go and like, oh no, men can have babies too. Woo-hoo.
Yeah, I mean, I seriously doubt that it's 5 years away. I think that we're probably 5 years away from like the first attempt.
This is something that they've been doing for a while, just that they've been doing it for women who are biologically women. So the physiology is already there, and they just either their uterus doesn't function or they don't have one. You can be born without one, just like you can be born missing a hand or a foot. So this has occurred. Or women who have had cancer and had to have it removed have had transplants. But it's a totally different thing to transplant it to a body where the anatomy is completely different. There's no fallopian tubes, there's no ovaries, the hormones are different, the glands that the hormones, everything is different. And if they just put in a uterus, it wouldn't be that pregnancy would easily occur. I don't think this is going to work without a great deal more effort and a great deal more research than they're letting on, simply because, like I said, the anatomy is very different and the physiology is very different. And I don't see how... I don't like they're talking about it as though men are going to be able to start getting pregnant in 5 years. I doubt it. I sincerely doubt it. What they might be able to do is maybe trans women might be able to feel that they have the same anatomy, but they aren't necessarily, I can't believe that they would necessarily be able to get to that point of functioning anatomy in that amount of time. Could she write about a smaller issue? Okay, people say things you don't like. People look in directions that you don't like. Big fucking deal. Mm-hmm. You pick your ass up and you get on with your life. I mean, has she ever stepped outside of her, it sounds to me like, cushy, sweet little life and walked down a street with real people on it? Has she ever gone any place where the biggest problem isn't the temperature of the air conditioning or whether or not somebody's looking at her ass? Just these women that make these complaints blow my mind. They really do. Like that your skin has to be so thin. And these are tissue issues. It's not even a women's issue. It's a tissue thin skin issue. Mm-hmm. And it pisses me off when they start acting like they're speaking for me because I'm a girl. I don't give a rat's ass about this. And it's not that I've never had somebody say something lecherous to me. That's happened with both sexes. I've said lecherous things to other people too. And, that's part of being human. And it happens to both sexes. I've been out with buddies when, I've had buddies wearing kilts that have had, girls come up and stick their hand up underneath without asking. Like reaching for the genitals without asking. My brother was in a band when we were in high school. We had girls. Andy was a bodybuilder. So we had girls chasing him all the time. And they had no sense of boundary when it came to him because he wasn't female. And, this is like to act as though this is something that only men do, only women experience, and it's the biggest fucking problem in the world. It's like a mental illness. It's an absolute ridiculous mental illness.
That's the thing that kind of always kind of throws me for a loop, though. Even with the first-time offenders caveat, this woman came after this guy brandishing 2 knives. I mean, this is a first offense, but I mean, you could argue very, very, without much ambiguity that she was trying to kill him. You don't go after somebody with 2 knives just to be like, oh, boo, 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 spooky, spooky. No, it's like that's
I wonder about that.
If the guy got as far as being dragged out and beaten up by 2 other men, then surely she can't have intervened. She must. If he was being dragged out and beaten, then she must have known that was happening and intervened if she wanted the attack to stop happening. Right. So this heavily implies to me that she didn't intervene with the attack because she wanted it to keep going on, which would suggest that she's pretty fucking twisted, to say the least.
Yes. And I don't know what else to add to it. It's just Hannah basically said the thing I was going to say is that, I think that there is a I don't know if it's a lizard brain thing where you see a man and a woman and they appear to be arguing or even getting violent with each other, or you just overhear it, which is what happened in this particular story, where this other guy, he heard a man and a woman fighting, and he went to intervene and immediately assumed the man was the victimizer and the woman was the victim, and so he broke his arm. Whether he meant to or not, he just kicked the guy or whatever. And then his friends dragged the guy out and beat the shit out of him. So it's just something to think about. I mean,
I'm sure there's some kind of clause. I'm sure I may have only seen this in just sort of legal fiction, but when there's just cause, like if there's a child missing, you can be excused for some sort of unlawful conduct in the pursuit of getting that child back, particularly if it's an emergency, like you've got 24 hours before you're likely to find nothing but a body. And I'm pretty sure people get absolved of certain actions once this goes to court, and that's probably how this went down. Well, they couldn't have known anybody. They were acting in the public good. White knights. You can't send them to jail for white knighting. It's just white knighting. Come on.
Exactly.
I think there's a division among responses when people come along and they see a conflict and it looks to them like one person is a victim and the other person is the bully. One person's being bullied by the other. There are people who will simply try to defuse the situation, or they'll use whatever degree of violence they have to in order to protect the person they perceive as the victim. But then there are people that go overboard, and they use the situation as an excuse to engage in a degree of violence that they know would not be socially acceptable in any other situation. And that's where you see the bully getting this severe beatdown. Like, in this situation, he wasn't the bully. But had he been the attacker, there would be people going, oh yeah, he was asking for it. If he had attacked her, and she had been defending herself with 2 knives, which is what these guys presumably thought was happening, it would not have been any more right for them to, once he stopped fighting, to have continued to beat on him like that, to the point where they gave him potentially life-threatening injuries and broken bones. But the difference is, it would have been socially acceptable. We wouldn't have been hearing about this as a case of assault against him. We'd have been hearing about the 2 heroes who stopped him from assaulting her. And I've seen this over and over again, and it strikes me that there's been a way too much tolerance, really, for that kind of behavior. And Have a Go Hero kind of sounds like, that attitude of, hey, I've got an excuse now. Let me have a go at this guy. Let me see what I can do to him.
He served his time, 3 months. He did it with good behavior. Even though he got out early, that guy's life is effectively over. It's over. He's not going to ever get a good job because no one's going to hire him. He's on the sex offender registry, which he has to essentially continue to sign up for every, I believe it's 3 months, for the rest of his life. So this shadow will follow him forever. So his life is over. The thing about prison, and this got me thinking about prison in general, I was under the impression that the goal when you imprison someone is to make it to where they are punished for the crimes they committed, and if possible, if they can be salvaged, you want to make them into a productive member of society when they leave. So when they get out, they can actually be good for our community because they got to live in our community. Now, a lot of people criticize the way that our prison system works now because in many ways it produces criminals when there weren't where people before they went in, especially men, because they're the majority of people who go to prison, they will not really be criminals. They might be guilty of a minor offense, but it go to prison, especially when you consider the war on drugs. And when they get out, by the time they've gotten out of prison, they've actually gone through, essentially become part of the system, and it's very difficult to break that cycle. And so they become essentially career criminals, potentially, right? And so because I'm of the opinion that if we have prison, the goal should be to rehabilitate and sort of repair the damage and punish the bad behavior, but also make someone who is commits a criminal offense into a productive member of society when they get out. It's not really useful to have this system that actually just sort of follows them like a shadow for the rest of their years. Add on top of that, okay, those criticisms aside, add on top of that the armed mob that's waiting outside of his door in case, I don't know, like, I guess if he leaves his house. And this is one of the stories that we almost didn't do because it's so controversial, because it sounds like we're defending a rapist. But first off, I'm not defending his actions. Secondly, he's not a rapist. He committed sexual assault. That's a different thing. Thirdly, there are women who do this that are teachers that do this to boys all the time, and they get lighter sentences, or they get the same sentence, and we don't consider them rapists, and they get to continue to do their job somewhere else or whatever. So is it justice to have a mob of armed people waiting for this boy, or I'm not going to call him a boy, I will say he's a man, he's a young man, waiting for this guy outside of his door? That's where I take issue. Like, is this something that we can criticize?
These vigilantes that are outside Turner's house, they're no different. They're no different than people who shoot abortionists. They're no different than people who burn down clinics. They're no different from people who burn down black churches. Because they're not doing this because they care about his alleged victim. And I say alleged because I'm not sure that I believe the conviction. They're not doing this because they care about victims in general. They're not doing this because they care about the law. They're not doing this because they care about justice. They're not doing this because they think he's wrong. They're not doing this because they think they're standing up for something that's right. They're doing this because it gives them excuses to let out their bloodlust. And that is all this is. Mob mentality, lynch mobs, and protest mobs that call for people's deaths, people who show up with weapons, people who make threats like this. This is bloodlust in action. It is one of the basest aspects of life on Earth. Not just human life, but pretty much every species out there. And as far as I'm concerned, that's all they're doing. They've given into instinct. They've given into the basest and lowest aspect of themselves. And in that vein, if what this guy did was anything bad at all, if he wasn't simply the person on the wrong end of the accountability eraser that alcohol is interpreted to be in a sex encounter, where women get the eraser and men don't. If he was actually using alcohol to contravene her ability to say no, they're just as bad as he is for being out there with guns and signs calling for his blood, because they're not out there for her. They're out there for themselves. Girls cannot slam it down without repercussions. And I'm not talking about getting raped. I'm talking about what alcohol does to your body. It not only poisons you to the point where you pass out, it can stop your heart. It can make you vomit and you aspirate if you're on your back. And if the other people around you are so drunk, they don't notice what's going on with you, which happens quite a bit at drunken parties, you die. You die if your heart stops. You die if you aspirate vomit. You die in a really shitty way, And women who try to slam it down are more likely to experience that than men, because women's bodies do not handle alcohol the way men's bodies do. And shame on feminists for getting upset when people talk about that. Shame on feminists for getting upset when people say women should not drink as much as men because bad things happen to women when women get drunk. Because they want to protect that one bad thing. They want to claim that one bad thing is untouchable. And so you can't talk about the health aspects. That's one point I want to make. The other point is, these two cases, in my book, these two cases are evidence that using alcohol as a get out of jail or get out of accountability free card is a privilege that is unique to women. Only girls can say, I didn't agree to that thing I started getting involved in because I was drunk. Only girls get to say, you were taking advantage of me because I was drunk. In fact, when it's been a guy in that situation, the girl who did it to him actually got him kicked out of school for raping her, even though he was blackout drunk. It doesn't go both ways in society. Only women and girls can use alcohol as a get out of accountability free card. Only women and girls are considered incompetent to drink and have sex. And to me, that says women and girls are incompetent to drink. And where feminists have bitched in the past about areas where there was a different age of drinking age, being able to buy beer, being able to buy liquor for men and women, clearly those people had something. Clearly they had figured something out. Clearly they had figured out that women can't handle alcohol. And yeah, there are rare cases where a woman can outdrink a man. But the reality is, maybe girls should be taught to be more careful around booze because it hits us harder. This idea that you that you collapse under the weight of I don't know, other people's existence is bullshit. We got to stop letting women teach other women to do that. It's going to kill our society. Because we need both sexes to be stronger than that. We need both sexes to be able to support each other. We need both sexes to be able to work. And it doesn't have to all be the same work, but we do need both sexes to be able to work together to keep our society going. And this has to stop.
Moving on to Honey Badger Radio number 70, we go through a list of 50 ways in which women are expected to endure emotional labor. Poor them.
There have been numerous efforts to achieve legislative reform by the movement, particularly in the area of family rights. But it's also been pushed for in domestic violence. It's also been pushed for in sexual violence law. It's been pushed for in numerous areas. And every single time, men stand up and say, hey, this thing that's happening is not right. Let's make it even. Not, let's give us an advantage. Let's make it even. Let's make the default in divorce cases where there's custody involved. Let's make the default in uncontested cases, not cases where somebody's going for custody, but just uncontested cases, 50-50 custody. That's fair. That's even. That's helpful to the kids. There's research that shows that it's beneficial for the children. So it's not even just for the fathers. And feminists have stood up and whined. The hue and cry that went out over that was unbelievable. Demonizing fathers, just unilaterally demonizing fathers as deadbeats and abusers who don't care about their family and don't care about their kids and only want custody to get out of paying child support, that women don't have to pay when men have custody, at least not in the same amount and not as frequently. So, and the same thing with sexual violence. There have been, like in Israel and in India, feminists have opposed treating it as rape when a woman rapes a man because they're afraid of false rape allegations. What does that tell you about them? And feminists in the United States have worked for like 30 or 40 years to make it so that the federal government here, and they've worked it into world government, that statistics that are gathered by government research to find out what sexual violence is taking place in order to inform law and policy on dealing with sexual violence. They've worked very hard to make sure male victims of female perpetrators don't get counted.
Just to set it up, this is Everyday Feminism's definition of emotional labor, according to the author of this article. Emotional labor is the exertion of energy for the purpose of addressing people's feelings, making people comfortable, or living up to social expectations. It's called emotional labor because it ends up using and draining our emotional resources. Here are just a few of the many ways that women and femmes in particular, apparently, are expected to perform emotional labor without compensation or acknowledgement throughout their lives. We are asked to watch, entertain, or help take care of our younger siblings, cousins, and other children more than men because people automatically assume we must love kids and be naturally nurturing.
And number 6.
And number 6 is when we have relatives or friends with physical or mental illnesses, they and their loved ones are more likely to reach out to us than men to take care of them. So they're kind of related, but go ahead.
Let me explain to you why they reach out to you as a woman rather than a man. Because they think a man will put their penis inside their kids or their loved ones who are incapable of fighting them away. There is actually a quality of men that they actually have an element of justice. Most human beings understand the concept of justice, but there are certain men who will take it one step further, in which they will take it upon themselves to enforce justice. They have an instinct to enforce justice, which can include considerable depredations on themselves, including losing their lives. So there is, and that is emotional labor, and it's right into, and like it's on an instinctive level for men. They want to see justice done. It's not just that they don't want to feel like a victim of injustice. They want to make sure that justice is served for everyone. And that's something that men do. And it's not, you don't see it in, you might see it in women, but the statistics that, like the studies, don't seem to find it very often in women. Well, the kind of proactive justice.
People who believe we can provide them with professional gain ask to pick our brains with no pay or reciprocation in the name of networking. And this is, something you experience more and more as you sort of grow in popularity. It's something famous people experience. In history and in sort of smaller scales, it was a role took by the clergy and other such sort of linchpins of social belonging. This is a role generally reserved for privileged people. It's a result of popularity, and but popularity is not oppression. It's definitely privileged. And like I've mentioned before, women in the modern era dress like Henry VIII, and yes, I'm sure it is a pain in the ass to dress like Henry VIII, but you wouldn't do it were it not for the results.
If your clothes are a pain in the ass, you're wearing them wrong.
Well, it's essentially like the doctor, the like high status doctor. He's like, he works for the Mayo Clinic or whatever, at Johns Hopkins, and he goes to parties and people ask him for free medical advice.
Yeah, the result of making yourself popular is people ask you for help in climbing the popularity ladder. Yes, if you're the boss of a sort of public relations company or whatever, a lot of people are going to knock on your door, and a lot of people are going to call your number. But you have the option not to give them anything, not even the time of day. Because you're not just a PR CEO, you're a woman. The people around you on any given street are your secretaries and your security.
Okay,
if at any given point in any medium, be it real life or online, you can not only refuse to have your brain picked by an adoring fan, but you can accuse the adoring brain picker of sexual harassment, and the mob will take them away. Just a lot of these are not burdens at all; they're privileges, surely.
Well, I mean, if they're dealing with the same thing a celebrity would deal with, maybe. But the other thing is, or I would suggest that is very true, Mike. The other thing I wanted to point out is there are business help books, like self-improvement books in business, that suggest that you should give. If you want to get, you give. So you give as much as you reasonably can. You help out. You give people the benefit of your information and ideas. You network. You help them with their projects. And so there's a body of knowledge that suggests that is a way to advance.
It's been a while since we chatted about it, but it was essentially that women are not allowed to be socially awkward.
Oh, that's so fucking retarded.
Oh, I literally, I take notes and I literally wrote bullshit in all caps on my paper and underlined it several times. Because isn't one of the most often used insults coming from the feminists that you're a neckbeard virgin gamer in your mom's basement? So really, where is the weight of social awkwardness going? And I got to thinking, because, being slightly socially awkward myself, slightly, I got to thinking about, when I was in school, right? Who were the people that really got picked on for having these nerdy, non-social things? And I'm like, okay, band people. No, the little flautists. I don't recall them ever being picked on, but the guys who played clarinet certainly were. And I got to think about gamers. They're guys in the corner of the caf playing D&D, and none of the girls who would occasionally sit down at the table ever had a single insult launched at them. I know, because I was one. And in fact, girls who are attracted to these more socially awkward venues are often treated like it's cute. It's cute when girls are nerdy, and when guys are nerdy, it's just, bet you're a virgin.
It's gross.
So yeah.
Somebody pointed out also in the main chat that the term adorkable was coined to describe women who were socially awkward, and it's female specific. It wasn't coined to include guys.
This is all emotional posturing. The only time that they really talk about how women have to be more compassionate to men, women have to do the emotional labor to men, is when they're excusing treating men like shit. Mm-hmm. This is the only time that really, because the thing is that if that was the case, if we were really in a society where it was expected for women to do the emotional labor for men and be compassionate to men, then I would probably be the fucking prom queen of that society, and Karen would be my prom king.
Oh, I would totally fucking be your prom king, and I would totally finger bang you into oblivion, Allison.
Oh, what the hell did I open up?
No, because I'm like a complete pervert. Why is anybody fucking even concerned about this kind of stuff? Right? We have to justify decisions that are perceived as threats to our safety, such as drinking, walking home alone at night. Okay, you know why you have to justify those decisions is because you expect other people to protect you and not yourself, right? You expect other people to be interveners. And so when other people are putting their lives on the line to intervene in situations where you have completely neglected your own safety, right? Yeah, people expect you to be responsible about that. If you were a guy, nobody would intervene and nobody would care. Nobody would hold you accountable. Nobody would say nothing because, you'd either get your ass kicked or you would defend yourself.
When men explain things to us that we know as much or more about, they expect us to listen as if they are educating us in order to stroke their
Like
egos.
these women ever do that.
Consider the phrases listen and believe and educate yourself. And consider what this whole fucking article is. It's them whinging about shit that everyone has to do, and we're just supposed to listen, but it's nothing to do with your fucking... This is the fucking... the inception hole in the article. This is the most infinite point on the fractal.
It literally says, when men explain things to us that we know as much or more about, they expect us to listen as if they are educating us in order to stroke.
Yeah, it's mansplaining. 17 is men mansplain.
Yes.
And it's emotional labor we have to do when men mansplain.
Because when you femsplain, it's totally legitimate, and men need to shut up.
I wonder if are there men that have problems with other men mansplaining to them? Does that happen? Maybe if they're male feminists. Our co-workers expect us to mediate conflicts, brainstorm ways to improve company culture, and perform other roles typically assigned to human resources.
No. And number one, if your coworkers are trying to get you to mediate conflicts, run away. Do not involve yourself in the drama. It will not end well for you, one way or another. If people are having trouble, you say work your shit out or go to human resources. But putting yourself in a position of meddling, it's something that women can do quite well on their own. They don't need to be asked a lot of the time. They just want to help, which really means they want to change the outcome of a situation in a certain way. And a corollary to that, I've been in various leadership or boss type situations. And in my experience, I mean, I've had men working for me and I've had women working for me. And in my experience, it's not the guys that come to me going, can you talk to this person for me?
No, it's always
the fucking women going, I have a problem, but I don't know how to bring it up. So can you talk to them for me? And of course, as a boss, it is my role to mediate, right? So it's what I've chosen to do. But my first question is always, well, have you said something? I mean, do they know they're bugging you? Like, have you said, hey, when you do this thing, it's kind of not cool, or hey, you wear too much perfume. Have you thought about toning it down a bit? No, it's always going to the higher up when it's women. Whereas guys, I've observed them, and it's generally over very quickly. It's, hey, when you fucking sneeze, could you fucking cover your mouth? Okay. And then it's done. So, again, this is an example of, in my opinion, of projecting yourself in a position of, well, they expect us to do this. Well, number one, who is the biggest demographic who is, quote unquote, expecting you to do this or asking you to do it? And number two, if you're not in a position where this is your job, why are you fucking letting them?
Men have to justify decisions that are perceived by women as threats to others' safety, even when they're not, like sitting next to the wrong woman on a bus, or another parent's child on an airplane, or being at a public park. Men aren't allowed justification for any of their sexual decisions. And if they even ask for their sexuality to be treated as a valid human condition, they're accused of being rapey bastards for speaking up. Women have the option of having girl time while bitching up a storm if their male partner asks for any time, sans the female partner, with his male friends. Women get women's spaces. Men get yelled at for asking for male spaces. Women are not allowed to pick and choose women are allowed to pick and choose their interests and refuse to engage in anything we're not interested in. But if a man won't watch a rom-com with his female partner, he's the asshole. Human resources departments were created to protect companies from litigation over conflicts women cause at work. Women femsplain to men about being human. Women aren't advised to play hard to get because it gives men a thrill, but to make men prove their worth, something women don't have to do anymore. Men are pressured to always be perfect in every field. And in women-dominated ones, even when they are perfect, they're still treated as less than perfect. And feminists have a habit of generalizing negative human traits in general to all men and only men. And men are judged more harshly in the real world if the way they polish their appearances doesn't fit women's very narrow standards for how they look. Not enough, he's a creep. Too much, he's unmasculine and attractive and a prissy boy. So all of the bitching from 11 through 20 was bullshit, because it happens to men too, and quite frequently it's worse.
If you look for a reason to hate men, chances are you're going to find it. The truth is, I don't blame women, especially in my generation, for hating men. They've been told there is a wage gap. I disagree. That there's a culture of rape on college campuses. I also disagree. And the patriarchy is keeping them oppressed in almost every facet of their lives. I really, really disagree. Political issues have been creeping into the bedroom. Now they're in romance. Because of the hateful culture, men are now demanding constant texts on campuses before engaging in raunchy post-party one-night stands. Men's rights activists have taken flight with a new philosophy called Red Pill, which aims to point out how derogatory, hypocritical, and vindictive third-wave feminists can be. No doubt there are men who should be buried underneath the prison. There's plenty of examples of how the justice system has failed victims, but it also fails men. The fathers' rights movement reports that only 14% of custodial parents are fathers. Mothers are more likely to be awarded child support. Women are more likely to graduate college. They live longer, are less likely to die in the workplace, less likely to go to prison, and extremely less likely to die in wartime combat. When it comes to dating, I don't care about any of that, unless you do. I used to think dating across the political aisle was not only possible, but practical. Hell, if James Carville and Mary Madeline can get along, I can date someone who thinks my genitals automatically give me privileges that they don't have, right? Wrong. People who are more loyal to their gender and not their significant other don't make good partners. They will always look at you as inherently more fortunate than them. They've bought into the battle of the sexes mentality, and it often pervades their perceptions of romance. Romance turns into a power struggle rather than a partnership. There are complex advantages and disadvantages to being a man or a woman in America. No doubt, men enjoy privileges that women don't, but that boat goes both ways. The truth is, these aren't political issues, but deeply personal ones. Oftentimes, anti-male or anti-female rhetoric is rooted in a previous bad experience. There are cultural opinions that reflect our worldviews and thusly affect how we want to raise our families. Now that America is more politically divided than ever, it's impossible to date someone with staunchly different ideals than you. It's a shame, really, that this divide is widening between the sexes. It's evident that gender politics is hurting our culture. More marriages are failing, and women are reporting that they are unhappier now than ever. Perhaps in several decades this won't be the case. Maybe one day men and women will stop trying to eliminate the lines between us and realize it's the difference between the sexes that make romance, family, and love an enjoyable experience.
It's wonderful. It's actually a beautiful article. It's actually really, really awesome.
And it's also a man expressing himself. Like, I like that part where it's hard to be close with someone who always thinks that you're more fortunate than them. That's an unbelievable, that's an emotional, abusive position to be in.
When you're in a relationship with another person, you're supposed to think of yourselves, the two of you, as a unit, as a team, as equal partners. And it's you and me against the world, according to Helen Reddy, right? She was talking about her kid, because, as a single mom, but, this is really what a partnership between a man and a woman is supposed to be, is you and me, right? we're a team. We have the same goals. We have the same interests. Any harm to you is a harm to me. Any harm to me is a harm to you. That's how you're supposed to view things. And you're supposed to be like, okay, so you have this strength, it compensates for this weakness that I have. I have this strength, it compensates for this weakness that you have, right? That's how it's supposed to work, right? You're a team. You're a unit.
They proved that, 1, they are huge hypocrites. 2, that they have nothing to counter his article with, that everything he said is true because they don't have an answer for any of it. And 3, they don't understand photography. This is a fairly average attractiveness guy. It's not an ugly guy. He's just photographed from the worst possible angle and distance to photograph a person. Like, whoever took this picture, they probably had to do it this way. It's basically a mug shot, and mug shots are never flattering. About 33 minutes ago, he tweeted, "I'm laughing at the comments on my appearance. If you can't laugh at yourself, then you can't truly laugh." And a couple hours ago, he also pointed out that he's been bullied in the past plenty, and it doesn't faze him at all. So here they are. They're like the pack of cards, the guards in Alice in Wonderland attacking Alice at the end of the nightmare. And she realizes that they're tiny and she can just bat them away. This is completely ineffective and stupid. And kudos to him for writing the article. And I think it's hilarious that feminists showed up in the comments to prove him right.
Well, it's like if you took away all of the fat shaming and the lookism in the comments, the feminist counter argument to what this guy said would consist of
Yeah, no, agreed.
And by the way, I wouldn't say this is unbelievable. I'd say it's perfectly believable. It's the internet. There's scarcely a comment section anywhere where you won't get trolls like this. But the point is, there's no shortage of trolls in women or feminism at all. So we could do away with these fucking myths that all the trolls on the internet are men who hate women.
I think there are men in the feminist movement who are more towards the Munchausens by proxy end. They still have that swinging dick syndrome that Karen described there, but it doesn't have anything to do with the women that they're purporting to protect. It has everything to do with their own egos. Now, it doesn't describe all the men in the movement either, but I believe that there is a significant, and then you can tell which ones they are because they get very upset the minute a woman starts challenging the victim narrative. And when a woman starts challenging the victim narrative and talking about how tough and strong women can be when we try, they start attacking and calling you mentally ill.
I would also add that I believe there are some men who are attracted to feminism because, if I were a serial rapist, I would want to spend 24/7 hanging out with people who were obsessed with rape, who were emotionally insecure, who felt like they shouldn't have to do anything to protect themselves. It should be up to society to, protect them from predators, and talk nonstop, obsessed nonstop about rape. If I was a sexual predator, I would be totally attracted to feminists because I'd be like, fuck, it's like a harvest. It's like nothing but a field of ripe canola.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like there does seem to be a number of sexual predators that seem to be attracted to the idea that they don't have to take personal responsibility for.
And the whole idea that it wasn't you that raped.
It was patriarchy.
It was toxic masculinity and patriarchy.
But I think there's also an element, what scares me about what you're saying, Karen, is that I know that regardless if it's protecting women against anything, the irony is that when women, you lose all of your protections, supposed protections as a woman, when a man thinks that he is protecting you against other women. This is the one situation where men will willingly rape, murder, stone, poison, throw acid on other women when they believe that those women are a threat to their women.
Finally, we have Fireside Chat number 43, where we discuss things such as atheism, feminism, and skepticism with the Sandre guy.
There does seem to be a correlation, absolutely, between simply non-belief and just skepticism in general. Now, of course, just being an atheist doesn't make you rational in any way. I mean, Atheism Plus and those kinds of movements are proof of this, of course, but it does, however, mean that I do think the odds of you being a rational person is higher if you already have, expressed skepticism towards religion. I do think so.
Because the problem with feminism is, while religious belief can be seen as metaphorical, feminism purports to actually describe reality. And in such, it has almost a privileged position in informing politics and social policy. I mean, at this point, because of the separation of church and state, private belief doesn't necessarily translate into this kind of expectation that everyone believe in the talking snake or that the talking snake should rule. But the crap that comes out of feminism has a patina of scientific accuracy because of the science, the rubber stamping by the scientific community. And that itself gives it more authority because it's seen as the reasonable response, like the reasonable position to hold. And it can be more intractable to argue against, you can't make people believe in the talking snake. The talking snake is a metaphor for some other aspect of being human versus, women were always oppressed, throughout all of history, but forever by men. And both concepts are actually completely unscientific.
Oh yeah, no, they absolutely are. And actually, I would say that even though I don't think that feminism, as a basic concept, is quite as stupid, but I would, however, say, and I would agree with you, that it is perhaps far more dangerous because it's like you say, I mean, any person who simply has not been indoctrinated into something, they will be able to tell that, oh, hey, talking snake, no, this is bullshit. This is bullshit. Get this shit away from me.
And the reason why I'm saying that I think maybe religious belief is less stupid than feminism is because it's less hateful. I mean, there is an aspect of us that needs an answer to the question, at least for some of us, needs an answer to the question of what happens next. Whereas feminism is the answer to the question of what happens next is you get oppressed by your brother, your son, your husband. And it's like, it's dysfunctional on its basic elemental core. And it's just a lie. Like, it isn't even just stupid. It's a fucking stupid lie. The thing is that, although I will say that feminism on its surface is a stupid belief, and it's also a very bigoted, vicious belief to believe that men would oppress women, period. That they would do that. I mean, you're talking about men. According to what I've seen, men have evolved to have a hormonal response to when women cry. So it's like an instinctive response to protect women. And you're saying they are capable of causing harm to women preferentially over themselves. Like, it's just madness. I don't know what the people who are saying that Islam is so terrible for sexual abuse of women are coming from. When you look at the statistics that have been gathered by 8 organizations from the West, the only statistics I've found have found that girls in Islamic countries are half as likely to be sexually abused as girls in Western countries. However, boys in Islamic countries are twice as likely to be sexually abused as boys in Western cultures. I mean, those are the statistics I found. You can argue with those statistics. And I mean, I recently had a discussion with somebody who I believe considers himself a skeptic, who was asserting, and he actually is from the Middle East. I think he's been public about where he was from, but he doesn't live there now. And he said to me, he told me about this particular case where a woman received something like 120 lashes or 80 lashes for being in an extramarital affair. And the whole event was a situation where she had gone to see her lover and she was married, and they were in a car in an isolated location because they were trying to hide their adulterous affair. And a bunch of men found them, dragged them out of the car, and raped them both, like the man and the woman. And when the Saudi police found out about this, they gave both the man and the woman 80 lashes for adultery, not for being victims of rape. But I bring this up because the person who was trying to say that Islam is so terrible for women mentioned this case and said, this is a woman who got 80 lashes for being a rape victim. And I was like, okay, because he was trying to assert that when women get raped, they get punished in Saudi Arabia for being raped.
That's simply not true.
Yeah, that not for being an adulteress, but for being raped. So he was saying that this woman got punished for being raped and that men are not punished for being raped at all. And I had going back and forth and I said, well, what is the situation for men? And what is the situation for men? How are they treated? Are they punished for having been raped? And he was like, no, men are never punished for having been raped. And if a man charges a woman with rape, she gets punished. But if a woman charges a man with rape, she gets punished too. And I was like, oh, that sounds so strange. So I looked up his case that he used to prove it, and one, he didn't even know there was a male victim because he had never inspected that case. He had never researched that case enough to be aware of it.
No.
And yeah, he never knew that there was a male victim who got exactly the same punishment. Except I believe that initially they both got 60 lashes for being in an adulterous affair, and then the woman got an increase in the number of lashes for lying to the police about it. Whereas the man never, I don't think he ever lied to the police about it. And he was also increased in the number of lashes, even though what she was charged with was lying to the police and adultery, which is a crime in Saudi Arabia. And what he was charged with was only adultery. They got equivalent numbers of lashes. And I'm like, this is completely different than what you were saying. And you completely removed the fact that there was a male victim in all this. And you don't see that that's the exact problem that I'm talking about.
I don't like the term MRA because it can very easily be misconstrued because it means men's rights activist. And I prefer MHRA, men's human rights activist, because it's much harder to misconstrue that, because in the name it becomes clear that I'm not advocating for any special rights just because someone has a fucking Y chromosome. I'm simply for enforcing just natural human rights to be actually lived up to for people with Y chromosomes, because, again, like a lot of people seem to want to conveniently forget, it's usually the guys who get the short end of the stick, regardless. But yeah, no, that's what I would call myself, an MHRA. I prefer that term.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I don't, I'm going to keep with men's rights advocate, just simply because when I call myself a women's rights advocate, nobody says, oh my God, are you for supremacy?
Yeah.
And there's the contradiction and hypocrisy. This is my own choice, though. I'm not convincing you of it. I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything, though, or what they should call themselves. In fact, I call myself a men's rights activist because of an act of men's rights activism or men's rights advocacy. But I think until that is resolved, and if you call yourself a men's rights activist, nobody bats an eye any more than you call yourself a women's rights activist, then I'll be happy. And I'll think and then I'll call myself nothing. I'll call myself a Doge rights activist, maybe.
The way I see it, MGTOW is a verb. It's something you do.
Yeah.
It's not really something I see as, an identity. I don't think I think it's kind of ridiculous when people try to make it this, identity. And I think it sort of goes against the whole purpose of MGTOW too, because if you really go your own way, why do you want to form a community around this particular way? And why do you want to, also another thing I've noticed is MGTOWism is what I would like to call it. It's supposed to be just essentially men just doing whatever the fuck they want, and as long as they have chosen it on the basis that that is what they truly want, really any kind of man should be accepted as a MGTOW if he declares himself as one. But what I've noticed is that, again, there's a bit of a double standard here. You have a lot of MGTOWs who simply flat out refuse to admit married men as MGTOWs, and I cannot for the life of me understand the logic behind that one, because if a man knows the risks of being married and knows that this woman essentially has a financial gun to his head, was it Janet Bloomfield who coined that term, essentially?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I like her spunk. But yeah, no, if a man is aware of this, but he trusts the woman enough to actually marry her, to sign a deal with the state, and he has chosen to do this because he wants to, then technically he is a MGTOW. I mean, there's no way to deny that logic. And still, you have these MGTOWists, I guess you could call them, who seem to just be like perpetual children. Like, no, you can't be a MGTOW. MGTOW is supposed to be not married. You know, I just can't stand that shit, if I'm going to be honest. Most MGTOWs, though, most people that I know who are MGTOW, they're just fine. You know, they're just ordinary guys, just doing whatever because we want to, and I think that's a very healthy mentality as a man today. I mean, as long as you're aware of the risks that exist in society as a man and you choose to take risks on your own terms, I'm fine with that. I really am. But like any label, I guess you will always have that minority who will act like children. I don't know.
We have been criticized for essentially having Patreons doing fundraisers, and people have made accusations that, you know, Alice is pocketing the money and she's just like using people.
I totally am.
Yeah,
I am.
But this is the thing that I find hilarious about it. If Allison wanted to get rich quick and she wanted to swindle everyone out of their money to create a project that she's actually never going to finish, and she wants to have a lot of money to make sure that gets done, men's rights is probably the least. That is the dumbest way to do that. So like that is the least wise business model to go to and platform to launch from, because you are very rarely going to make that much money. If Allison really wanted to do it, she would go under a new anonymous name and make a feminist-oriented fundraiser for something. She will get 10, 20 times the amount of money that she needs. And she can lie to people. She can lie and not deliver on it, and then do another fundraiser and get the same amount of money, and she'll get to do speaking engagements at colleges for $5,000 each, like Anita does, like Lori Penny does. She can go to the UN. She can get on the Colbert Report, you know, be on TV. The men's rights platform is not a profitable platform. It's an incredibly risky platform that, you know, most people are going to find a joke. So, and I'm not saying this to necessarily defend Allison, because she doesn't need me to do that. But I am using it to point out how committed people get to these con artists. And it's funny because being a woman is actually more helpful, because I'll also add this on. When Anita started her Feminist Frequency series, Jonathan McIntosh was on board from day one. He was probably the person that came up with the idea and wrote her scripted pieces, because everything Anita does is scripted, which is very likely that he was the one that was very involved. There's a lot of speculation around it. I don't know for sure, but that's just my guess, okay? So Jonathan McIntosh essentially helped Anita make the $200,000 for the videos she never delivered on. And he's involved with helping her do the next series, which is the one about women in history. When Jonathan McIntosh himself tried to make his own series, which is the Pop Culture Detective Agency, he has not raised nearly as much money as she has, even though he makes basically the same content. I think it's got to do with the fact that he's a man, because they're both liars, and you know. So that's the funny thing, but I think Allison...
Of course, and I'd like to add, though, that it's pretty obvious that he actually wrote her content, because, it's if you actually analyze the things she says, it's so feminine that only someone as castrated as him could possibly have written it.
Plus, they basically, make the same tweets? Like, there were people who you could look at their tweets when they talked about, there was a mass shooting, and Anita, the bodies weren't even cold yet, and Anita made a tweet about toxic masculinity and how that was responsible for the shooting. And Jonathan McIntosh made a tweet that was basically the same thing, word for word. And so it's like, he's clearly writing her material. And he's
or she's writing him.
Or she's writing his, but I have a feeling he's the one.
Evolutionarily speaking, people are never going to care as much about men's needs as women's. It's just not going to happen. But I do think that if we simply just get rid of a lot of this manufactured indifference or downright hatred of masculinity, people will at least care enough to actually deal with male issues and then try to keep men from going back to this very bad state that they're in right now. And I do think that much, at least simply because people would eventually realize just how important men are to keep society running.
We hope you enjoyed this clip show. If there was a clip from these shows you think we should have shown, please leave a comment on the video and include a timestamp. Thank you, and Badger on.